Welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman, a podcast loaded with practical tips, powerful scripts, personal stories, and simple steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. So get ready to get the information you need to make the impact you want from someone you trust, your friend, parenting expert, Dr. Robyn Silverman.
Hello and welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything, where we give you the tips, scripts, stories, and steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. I'm so honored to be your host, Dr. Robyn Silverman, child and teen development specialist, author, and speaker, and most importantly, parent of two great kids who give me the opportunity to love, learn, and grow every single day, whether I want to or not. Believe me, I get it. It's not always easy, but we're in this together, and we have some great people helping us along the way. So most of you probably know I've been writing the Powerful Words program for after-school programs in schools for over 15 years now. It's a program that focuses on one powerful character word a month with scripts and tips and a full curriculum to teach and encourage children to become a strong citizen of their household, their school, their community, and their world. And I'm writing a book about that stuff right now, and I'm doing some family action blueprints on it for the house, for the home. More on that is coming. So personal development and character education are really important to me, and I know it's important to all 65,000 of you who have been downloading the podcast over the last year. So I get really excited when I meet other people who share my viewpoint about the need to sort of shift our attention from academic success and sports success to one that focuses on positive youth development and personal growth. While the terminology of family values might conjure up heated arguments we've heard on the political trails for years, it doesn't need to be that way. It's important to determine what our family values are, and in order to provide a foundation to our children and ourselves to live life in a productive and wonderful and meaningful way, we need those family values right there. These values become our grounding force. They become our decision makers when we're wondering what to do in challenging situations and in questionable circumstances. They become the voice in our heads, the song in our hearts, the governing energy inside our bodies. They truly are important. So how do we figure out what our family values are, and how do we convey them in a way that they do become the ground, the foundation for our children? Well, I'm so thrilled to have my colleague, Dr. Marilyn Price Mitchell, on the show today so that we can have a good conversation about all of this together. Dr. Marilyn Price Mitchell is a developmental psychologist, speaker, and fellow at the Institute for Social Innovation at Fielding Graduate University, where she studies how young people become caring family members, innovative workers, ethical leaders, and engaged citizens in an increasingly complex society. She's a founder of Roots of Action, a website that shares research-based resources on positive youth development with parents, schools, and communities, with an audience of over 500,000 readers each year. She's the author of Tomorrow's Changemakers, Reclaiming the Power of Citizenship for a New Generation, and a contributing writer at Psychology Today and Edutopia. So welcome, Dr. Marilyn Price Mitchell, to How to Talk to Kids About Anything.
Thanks, Robyn. It's a delight to be here.
Well, I'm so thrilled you're here. I just feel like you and I have such a similar way of looking at life and children and families. So I'm excited to have you, and I'd love to know from you before we get into the meat of the matter. For those people who haven't had the opportunity to meet you, read your articles or your book, can you tell us what gets you up in the morning and what got you so focused on family values and sort of character-based guiding principles that you're known for in your work on your Compass Advantage and in Roots of Action?
Well, thanks, Robyn. I have had a long career, believe it or not, in corporate America. And that's where I started out working with adults and leadership training, communication skills, and so forth. And in over many years, I began to realize that young adults were coming into the workforce without the skills that they needed to really succeed, and they were not they were not the academic skills, they were the internal skills, the things like resilience and being aware of self and integrity and so forth. So about 15 years ago, I made a shift from working in big companies to going back to getting a PhD and focusing on adolescent development. And because I realized that it's during childhood and adolescence where these core abilities are really developed. And I wanted to be a part of changing the dynamics of how these things grab hold in those years and how they affect kids as they grow into the workforce.
Excellent, excellent. And I agree with you that so much of our work needs to be focused on those teen years and those young years as children are getting a hold of who they are and how they fit into the world and who their family is. So your work as well as mine is based strongly into positive youth development. And for those listening now, can you explain from your view what positive youth development really is and how it informs your work?
Well, I think one of the best ways I like to help people understand positive youth development as both a field of study and a practice is to kind of compare it to preventative or integrative medicine. So, of course, we have to continue to study how to cure diseases, just as we have to continue to study how to treat and manage undesirable behaviors or mental health issues in children. But the treatment of these deficits, from temper tantrums in young children to risk-taking behaviors during adolescence, have been the primary focus of parenting for way too long.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so rather than focusing on all of those deficits, positive youth development really seeks better ways to foster health and well-being rather than merely correcting or curing or treating kids for their maladaptive tendencies, right? And so this way of thinking looks at how kids develop positive internal strengths like character and courage and imagination and all of the other wonderful core human assets we have. And so I see these strengths as the foundations of well-being and thriving throughout life. And I think the research shows that they really are the essence of who we are as human beings.
Right. And those internal strengths are what helps kids to really thrive in our world instead of just sort of survive. And I know, from my work in positive youth development, I sort of created, a mantra that, sort of sets up everything that I do, which is that young people are assets to be developed, not deficits to be managed. And you brought about that idea of deficits just now, where we focus so much on what do they lack and how can we sort of bring them up. And even, I remember, even right before I started my doctoral work, somebody asked me about what I was interested in, and I really didn't even have the words. I was just like, I want to do something like before the bad things happen, or like I just was, I was talking to them about it, and they're like, well, you're really not talking about prevention, which was like a huge word out there at the time when I first was starting. And this was, back in, I don't know, 97 or something like that, showing my age. But, it was, where I was like, it's not really prevention because I'm really not trying to talk about like what's wrong with children, but I want, and they're like, oh, and somebody said, it's promotion of positive development. I'm like, yes. So it was all about those strengths. And I love that you come from that same cloth and that you're really, trying to help kids and families see those strengths. And one of the things that you've done so beautifully is talk about this compass advantage. That's like such an important part of your work. There's so many parts of children's character that we want to develop, from their ability to stay disciplined and focused when they're going after a goal, to showing kindness and empathy when others are in need, to showing confidence and courage when faced with challenge. And your framework that's based in positive youth development is called the compass advantage. And I'd love for you to tell us about what led to that. What is it? What are those 8 core abilities that you talk about in that compass advantage?
Right. Well, first of all, I'm a narrative researcher. So it means that I study and analyze stories, human stories, and I look for the common themes among them.
Neat.
And I began studying the life stories of college students who were highly engaged in civic or environmental projects. And I wanted to discover how these young people grew to become engaged citizens and leaders in their communities. So this is how it all started for me. And what I discovered was really fascinating. My research showed that these young people had developed these 8 core abilities throughout their lives, the combination of which helped them thrive in whatever endeavors they chose. So as you mentioned, I created this framework called the Compass Advantage to illustrate that the core abilities really operate like an internal compass for kids. They help them navigate their lives in meaningful ways. So the core abilities are curiosity, sociability, resilience, self-awareness, integrity, resourcefulness, creativity, and empathy. And as I researched these internal strengths over the last number of years, I've discovered that they are key to the development of all children, not just those who become civically engaged, right? Those are the abilities that help kids thrive in life and in school.
Oh, it's just such a neat idea, and I'd love to get into that more. Before we delve into that compass advantage, you mention on something that I've read, this parenting promise, and it has to do with your compass advantage. But I want to just start there before we sort of delve into that a little bit more. Why do you think it's important for parents to set, I would say, like a particular intention around their parenting and expression of these values, these family values, or this compass advantage, straight out in sort of a parenting promise aspect?
Well, when you started the conversation today, you talked about family values and how they inform who you are as a parent. And I think that so often parents don't take the time because they are so busy with all of those everyday, it's like all of the things that happen every day, that we don't take the time to think about that higher purpose that we have as parents and that the values that we hold for our children. What I've discovered in my research is that those values are really the core of how kids develop as human beings. And so if we lose touch with those values and only pay attention to the daily, homework and taking our kids from here to there, our kids miss out on some really important learnings and meaning in their lives. So the compass advantage and this parenting promise that goes along with it really helps us shift the focus from trying to correct all those perceived deficits on a daily basis to really envisioning a higher purpose for parenting. And that purpose really is to understand and to really begin to intentionally foster these 8 abilities in our kids every day.
So important. I just love what you're talking about here. It's really a mindset, a parenting mindset, right?
It absolutely is.
Okay, yep. So you're shifting your parenting mindset from one that is focusing on correction and to one that's focusing on promotion of strengths, highlighting strengths, and allowing your children to develop into the amazing creatures that they will be. That's really what you seem to be saying.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so let's put high beams on a few of the areas that you're mentioning in the compass advantage. I love what you set out, and I'd like to talk about it in terms of everyday experiences and scenarios that parents might be in, so that we can see how we can apply this. All of my work is on application, and yours is so much like that too. So I think this would be really helpful for those who are listening. So let's look at a couple of different scenarios and see how this compass advantage can help us in this shift of our mindset, because you do it so well. So let's say that, the family's watching TV, and somebody says something disrespectful or marginalizing. We see this all the time. So how could the compass advantage and the sort of family values, the parenting promise, how can that help us to maybe use it as a discussion springboard, or help us to know what to do in that scenario? What's next? What's next after we see that?
Right. So, and we see that so often in our world today.
Yes,
right?
It's like a common thing.
TV, there's a lot of disrespectful behavior going on in the world.
Yes.
So it gives us an opportunity. I mean, many parents sort of stray away from tackling those issues that their kids are witnessing every day. But what I suggest and what I believe is that we have to tackle these issues with our kids. And for example, integrity would be the part of the compass that I would say, okay, so this is an aspect of integrity that what are the values that we live by, and and it's an opportunity to talk with our kids about our values. So to ask, how do you perceive, what do you think of that behavior? What if you were on the other side of that behavior, or trying to put yourself in that other person's shoes? Empathy. So all of these things in the compass, these 8 abilities, they don't really work. Sometimes you can pull them out individually, but they all work as a system.
Yes.
And in fact, my background is basically in the study of human systems.
Oh, neat.
And how it's like a web, right? So if you have a web of core values and strengths that you're working on developing, you begin to see the connections between them, right? So, you're talking to your child about, how would they feel if someone said that to them?
Oh, yes.
Then that creates self-awareness, right? And it's through the relationship that you build with your child that you are able and willing to tackle these various components of the human spirit, really.
So if you're watching a movie or you're reading a book together, some of the questions that you're asking might apply to the protagonist in the story. Like how might you with a sort of more open-ended situation, you're reading a book and somebody triumphs at the end, it's like most books or movies. Like what might you do with those core abilities?
So books are great vehicles to instill the compass abilities in children, because we're reading a book, and like, as you say, there's a protagonist, and perhaps they overcame a lot of protagonists, right? They overcome challenges, right? And they embrace failure to learn and to go to that kind of next plane, or they've conquered something in their life. So instead of just reading the book and letting it, finish, at the end, I suggest let's talk about this. So what did the the protagonist, what was it about their character that you really liked the most? What resonated with you? So what challenge was it that they overcome? What did they learn from that? How does that, how could that apply to your life or our life as a family? So you're constantly using and thinking about these higher level, purposeful things that we parent around, and you constantly have them in your mind so that you can draw on them when you're reading a book or when you're watching a movie. Let's say, you finished watching a family movie and, usually something really resonates about a character or about what they had to go through to overcome a challenge. Or perhaps they felt self-conscious about something, and our kids can relate to these because they're human things that which is the reason entertainment relates to us so much, right? Because we see in ourselves what we see in characters in movies and in books.
Right.
So what we want to do as parents is we want to use that to help our kids become more self-aware, to become more resourceful. I mean, many times in books, or movies, the protagonist has achieved great goals. Right? They've worked hard. They've solved problems. So what can we gain and learn from these books that help us be a better family, that help us create, work on goals together, to be creative? I mean, all of these abilities are wrapped up into heroes and heroines of stories.
Right. And so you can even be, pulling something out from a movie or a book and say, this quality of resourcefulness, being able to, scrape by on very little, but really live large, reminds me of grandma when she did whatever. Yes. Or I really see the protagonist as reminding me of you and the way that you tackled that one issue in school. It's sort of a neat way to highlight a characteristic, a trait, a value without it seeming forced.
Exactly. You are right on. I mean, that's what you want to do, is you want to help kids understand how these abilities live inside themselves through many different channels, right? And just exactly what you said.
Yeah, no, it's a really great system, and I love that it's systematic. That you're not just pulling one thing. Today we're going to be talking about resourcefulness. So, what about there are situations that are certainly very challenging for our young people, and I'd love to get into maybe some more specific things, because I think you would have such good answers to how we can use this compass advantage here. Like, for example, your child comes home with, a really bad friendship issue, or he witnessed bullying, and he, and it's, yes, of course, he or she is telling you about it. But how could that be an opportunity to use your system of the compass advantage to tackle that issue or respond to that issue, or sort of interpret that issue in a unique way?
Right. So these are great questions. And I think that what happens with using, as you said, a little bit of a system, a framework, so that you can frame and keep in the front of your mind what's most important.
Right.
So when using your example, let's say a child comes home and either they've been bullied or they've witnessed that. Again, I want to get back to the fact that all of these abilities get nurtured through our relationship with our children. So as a parent, we're our child's greatest ally. It's about standing at their side, not doing their learning for them.
Oh, ouch. And yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's not so often I think parents have the tendency to say, "Oh my gosh, that's such a terrible person," right? Or something comes home from school and the teacher has done something, and like we're already judging the teacher, right? Before we've actually just even heard what the situation is. We're always taking our child's side and defending our child.
Oh, yes.
And it's not about doing that. It's about getting your child, being there for your child, and helping your child see the situation through new lens. So, using the bullying example, so getting them to talk about what that felt like for them. How did it? So, you're probably familiar with somatic work, just getting kids to feel in their bodies. What did that feel like? So, oftentimes kids feel tense in their chests, or, they've come home and their shoulders feel heavy, and or they have headaches, or lots of different physical sensations, what we call somatic reactions. Every time we get a child to just take a moment and reflect and just check in with how they're feeling in their bodies, what they're sensing in their bodies, helps them become more self-aware that, gosh, this bullying situation that's going on, it's making me sick. Right? It's actually giving them sometimes an upset stomach, or, and then, to go on to weave through as many of these as you possibly can, and helping your child, asking them questions about, well, again, what might they do the next time? Not telling them what to do the next time, but allowing them to really understand their own processes of how they would do things differently themselves. Again, empathy, resilience. How do they face challenges? These kinds of challenges that come up from other children. It's not because we can't solve all of these things. We know this by now. It's like, this is a world filled with challenges, and it's not really about solving all of the challenges or the deficits like we've talked about, but it's about helping your child be the person that they want to become in the face of these challenges.
Oh, so beautifully said. That's such a quotable. I love that. I'm sure I'm smacking that right on a meme right there. That's just so outstanding. And, I think you've tipped us off a little bit to think about, as parents, that resilience piece is tough.
It's tough, yes.
It's tough because it suggests and necessitates us stepping back and allowing our children to face challenges without us rescuing them and keeping them from feeling the strife and frustration that one does when they are challenged. It also, if we do that, of course, then we are tripping them up because we're not allowing them to gain the resilience that is so important. We've talked a lot about success and failure on this show. Best-selling author Jess Leahy. We talked about mental strength with Amy Morin. And so I'd love to delve into that a little bit more with you. Like the very common scenario that, often we stamp certain things with a sticker and a good job. So let's say a child has been struggling with math or spelling or a paper testing, whatever it could be. And on the first hand, we've got to step back and allow them to work on the challenge without trying to fix it for them or telling them the teacher's terrible. But let's say that they do finally overcome that challenge, with maybe some hard work or walking the trenches and just experiencing it. I mean, even if they don't succeed, but they stuck with it. Let's just say they stuck with it. So what could we do beyond either saying nothing, which I think so often we let sleeping dogs lie when good things happen. We're like, oh, good job, or all right, let's carry on and move on to this next thing that you're having a trouble with. So what could we do when our child it shows us that they've stuck with something and maybe continue to fail, but, are still sticking with it, or they finally kind of came through to the opposite side? How could we use the compass advantage in that situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, you've probably delved into the issues of praise and the positives and negatives of praise on your show, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we know about praise is that it's most effective when we're praising kids for the things that matter most. Mm-hmm. And certainly and I don't even like the word praise anymore, but giving them the feedback that you really feel and understand what they've been through and how you admire the resilience that they have showed.
So beautiful, yes.
Right. So that's praise. Right. It is, and
it's praise. Specific. It's more specific. It's so beyond the good job, the sticker on the paper that says super. It says, I acknowledge that this was tough for you.
Struggle. Exactly.
I see that you worked hard on this. You worked through something. There's something inside you that was at work here. And I admire that thing that was at work here, your resilience, your stick-to-itiveness, your determination, your perseverance. It says something different. It doesn't. It's so different than the good job.
Oh, it's so different. And because it really resonates at the core of who we are. I mean, that's when you think about resilience, you think about this is an ability, an attribute that we need for the rest of our lives. We need it when we go through losses, and we continue to do that for the rest of our life. These are abilities, by the way, that I think one of the things that always happens when I share these at workshops and so forth is that the parents get it right away, because these are all abilities that go from that are developed in our youth and that continue to grow throughout our lives, and that as parents we can see these abilities in ourselves. So it's like we can share these with our kids by sharing perhaps stories of when we went through a hard time and how we became resilient, or some of the things that have made us more self-aware. And it's often through the struggle. And certainly my research has confirmed that, and many other studies have confirmed that it's through the struggle of everyday life that we actually build all of these abilities. Even, curiosity is a great one. I mean, curiosity is really about lifelong learning. If we don't nurture curiosity in kids, then they won't become lifelong learners. So we have to ask ourselves as parents, is it just about getting kids through high school or college? Right. Or is it about nurturing lifelong learning? And and I hope that parents see the value that it's not just about a grade. Now, the research shows that this is one of the sad statistics in today's grade-driven culture, is that by the time children reach third or fourth grade, their curiosity has been extinguished.
Oh, this is painful. My child is in third grade, and I've got one in second, so I don't have much time.
Well, and the reason for that is that because that's about the time they start to begin to focus on getting learned answers to test questions.
Right.
Flashcards help them memorize, but in the process of focusing on grades, they lose the sense of discovery that they had when they were much younger. The sense of discovery that they were born with.
Yes.
And when they lack that curiosity, many kids enter middle and high school totally uninterested in learning and totally interested in just grades.
This is sad, yes.
External, right? The external, not the internal.
Right. Well, they're getting praised for that, right? I mean, it's
exactly
the grades say you're doing it. You're doing it well.
Yes, exactly. So here it is. It's the shift from the external to the internal that parents need to make in nurturing these internal abilities in their kids.
So in the sense of curiosity, and I see it in my son, he's like such like a nature science, like loves all of it's picking up everything off the ground. Did you see this rock? Did you notice this sunset?
Yes.
He is just all about it. So in the sense of curiosity and that internal value, what would you say is like one or two things that we can do as parents to sort of shift that attention from just the external to looking at how we can foster that curiosity in our children?
Well, again, it's praising them situationally for the kinds of things that they're doing that is showing how curious they are, and not answering their questions for them or doing their work for them, but helping them, supporting them as they engage in their own sense of discovery. So, I remember my own daughter as she was going through school. She's 35 now, so she's totally grown. But the science projects in classes and homework that kids have. It's so easy to, as a parent, you want them to get that A.
Yes, right.
And so the work on the project is about the A.
Instead of the investigation and the learning.
Yes. So whatever you can do to nurture that, the questions being answered. Yes. Google, in all of its glory, has been great in so many respects, but it has helped extinguish kids' curiosity because they can Google the answers as opposed to finding the path toward discovery. So if you get an answer, you don't need to be curious anymore, right?
Okay, so let's say the child wants to learn more about whales. Let's just say, I'm wondering, Mom, how heavy is a whale? Or, where would I see them? Or what color are they really up close? Or what does their skin feel like? And they are asking some curious questions about something. What would be your suggestion for a parent so that they're cultivating the curiosity instead of just like, let's Google that and find out?
Right. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't Google the answers to questions that kids have and teach them how to use the internet to discover the answers.
Sure.
But here's the thing, is that we have to teach them how to go deeper than finding just the answers. So, the questions would be, so what makes you curious about that? So what is it that asking them deeper and deeper questions about how they're exploring the world around them, and valuing the different ways that they learn. So oftentimes parents learn differently than our kids, right?
Right.
And so I learned so much from having a daughter with learning disabilities.
Sure.
Because she learns very different than I do, and having the patience to stay with her the way she was learning, right, is not the way I was learning, but to encourage her own learning because eventually what curiosity and creativity lead to is they lead to innovation.
Right.
So they lead to the creation of new ideas, new products, new discoveries, new services for disadvantaged populations, new discoveries for how to solve environmental problems. So it's like, it's not just an answer.
No, you're right. You're right. And my son does seem to come up with all these ideas about. I was talking this morning about, he said, Mom, come over here to the refrigerator. And he's showing me like the dial for, how cold it should be. And he's like, wouldn't it be neat if we all had a button like this and we could carry it around the house and then we could like make it colder or hotter depending on how we want to be in each room.
That's so cool.
Right.
So
it was so cool.
That's what you want to encourage and continue to encourage as he gets into high school.
Yes, exactly.
And that's harder and harder and harder for kids to do when they get into older grades.
It is, because especially because you're just, the people are just probably like, listen, dude, like, okay, great. But now, why don't we study, this particular, historical passage, or, we're doing this thing. When are you ever going to really get to talk about those sort of innovative ideas? It is a great idea. I mean, it is very cool.
Well, and with curiosity, there is no right and wrong.
Right, exactly. You don't have to be like, well, that would never work because, where would people get this button from in? And,
exactly.
Everybody's changing the temperature of the room. It's just lots of problems. Okay, so I get it. And I just like the idea of just encouraging the questions, encouraging them to explore it further and explore things that haven't been done before. Even the crazy ideas. We talk a lot about brainstorming when I'm presenting and trying to help people understand that it's not about rating something good, bad, or this wouldn't work, or this is a stupid idea. It's about getting all the ideas on the table because the craziest idea may be the one that works. So let's get it out as adults even. And people are very concerned about doing that because they don't want to look foolish and they don't want to be embarrassed, or they, feel like, well, maybe we should just stick to the straight-laced ideas. But hey, who's made progress with just straight-laced ideas?
Exactly. And sometimes kids don't feel like they are heard and understood at school with those kinds of creative ideas.
Agreed.
And so because school is so programmed to, we've got curriculum, right? And the kids are learning the certain curriculum. And so I think it's even more important for parents to in their homes, to really help their children feel seen, heard, and understood by them. And we know from research that when kids feel that way with their parents, and that, again, it's the relationship of just feeling like your parents understand, they hear you, they see deeper into who you are as a person through these 8 abilities, because out in the real world, in school and so forth, people don't often take the time to get to know you as well as obviously as your parents know you. And that's the key relationship that children have to take root and thrive. is that parenting relationship.
So then is the idea to just keep asking your kid, like, tell me a little bit more about that, or how would that work, or sort of prompting them to talk about it, and then also underscoring, wow, that's a really innovative and creative idea. I like,
Yes.
I like hearing about that. Maybe you can write it down or draw a picture or send it to so-and-so, or, get more information on how exactly that would work. How might we do that?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's really an interesting way of going about things, and certainly a different way of learning, considering so much is rote memory right now. So before we kind of end up with everything, I just want to ask you one more question along those lines.
Sure.
Because, there's a tricky topic that's come up many times, which is on making mistakes. And, we know to err is human, but to me, it feels like we spend so much time trying to be perfect or burying the mistakes, or we, as we've sort of hinted at, rescue our children before they can make them. So I'm wondering how you might advise parents to handle a situation when they see their child like actively making a mistake, or it's already happened, they failed the test, they forgot their homework on the table, they yell at the friend, they missed the goal at soccer or whatever.
Right.
What needs to be done or said in this situation that would ground that mistake in this compass idea, rather than going towards the hey, bummer dude, or next time we'll do better, or whatever. What we do.
Right. And this is a very challenging, I agree. It's a very challenging topic for parents, because there are some, I talked to a parent recently who, their teenage son just isn't doing anything, right? He's failing all of his topics, right? All of his subjects. And so, there's certainly a wide range here of failure, right? So there's the little failures and there's the big failures. And, but there's, I think, the one thing that we fail as a society to recognize is that our imperfections and our failures, and just the opportunity that we have to be vulnerable with each other, is really another opportunity to cultivate wisdom. And one of the things that, I think that parents have to, just sit down with their children and say, look, here, share what kind of grades you got. If you share some of your own failures. Be vulnerable with your kids. Show them that you are not perfect. Right. I think one of the things that parents lose track of the fact is that they are not perfect.
No, boy, believe us, right? We're not perfect. Yes.
Yeah, but and you know what? Kids know that we're not perfect.
Right.
They see our imperfections. And so why isn't it okay for our children to not be perfect? Right. And I, when you asked me originally, when we started out, about how I, what makes me get up in the morning and how I kind of found a passion for this work, part of it, through career, being in the corporate world and seeing what I did, that's part of it. But another part of it for me, and I think for many of us who are in this business, is just from our own parenting experiences. And I, having raised a child with learning differences, helped me see that it wasn't about how she failed, or how she didn't get the grades that she wanted, or that she could never live up to her own expectations. It was about how she persevered and became resilient in the face of those challenges. And as I look back now, quite a few years, I am so proud of the person that she has become, and it has nothing to do with how she succeeded in school. And when I look at these. I mean, I didn't have these 8 core abilities. I hadn't done the research that I've done when I was parenting. And so it's a reflection piece for me that I was always looking for, we compare our child to other children so often. And particularly kids who learn differently, who don't get straight A's at school, who aren't the champions of the various sports teams and so forth. But all children have these 8 core abilities that they develop regardless of what grades they get in school. And when we think about who people are, the sad part is that so often our kids don't know who they are separate from the grades that they get, because that's how they get evaluated.
Such an important thing. Yes, absolutely. Such an important realization, and makes it that much more important for us to tease that apart, given that grades are just evaluating one thing.
And it's not, because grades do matter. But in the process, grades take so much from our children in allowing them to get to know who they really are, separate from a grade. And I think that is at the essence what parents must do for their children.
Oh, well, that is incredibly vital, and I really appreciate you saying that, and probably informs your top tip, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What is your very top tip that you would like people to come away with after listening to this podcast?
Oh my, let's see. I think I would have to sum it up to say, to stop worrying so much about how to fix your child's deficits and instead focus on building those core strengths that children really need to thrive in life.
Very important, and I agree with you. If we can focus more on strengths, children will rise to the occasion. When we focus so much on what they lack, they never feel like they're enough.
Yeah, that's right. And the reason I call it the compass advantage is that when you have this internal compass inside of yourself, your child and you, but your child has the potential to become the pilot of their own lives.
Love that.
And I love the metaphor is that, as a parent, isn't that what we want for our children?
Right. Absolutely. And we want them to think about, what do I want here? What can I do here? Rather than focusing on everybody else and what they're doing and what they'll think of what you're doing. So I think you're right on that.
Yeah. And finding their own happiness, finding their own and accomplishing their own goals. So it's not about, so often I hear parents say, and you probably do too, Robyn, I just want my child to be happy.
Yes, of course. That is number one.
What does that mean?
Yes.
Right? And for me, what that means is allowing my child to live a life of their choosing and to do so with grace and empathy and integrity. And how I can help them do that is my role as parent.
Ooh, love it. Get chills. Love that. That is beautifully said. And we need to stick that up in the office and just go by that because, right up in the kitchen. So what is the resource of the week? Where would you like people to go in order for them to learn more about you and the great work you're doing?
Well, the website that really highlights my work is at rootsofaction.com. And I might point people, there's a lot of information there, and it is built around learning how to parent with through the compass framework. But one of the places that, since you mentioned the parenting promise, I'll point people to go to the resources section of the website, and there you will find the parenting promise. You can print it out. You can hang it on your refrigerator. You'll also find a resource that was developed by some middle and high school kids called I Have a Dream. And I worked with a group of teenagers to develop this, also this statement. And what I wanted to find out is what children want, right?
Right.
And so what that I Have a Dream statement is all about is they're coming out and saying, look, I want to be guided by my own compass, not what by others believe I should do, right? I want to learn and grow from my relationships and experiences, both good and bad. And I want to be loved and appreciated for who I am, not just for what I achieve.
Oh, very important. And that sounds like a great page. We're going to be putting all of this in the show notes so we can put links for all of these so that people know exactly where to go, because you have so much and great resources that I think people will want to look up and download for themselves. So thank you. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's just been wonderful to talk with you, and we are on the same page, and continued good luck with all of your work as well, Robyn.
Oh, thank you so much. I really love what you've said about really helping kids to listen to their internal compass. The work is incredibly important. And I think that ultimately, if we can help parent in this direction and teach in this direction as coaches, as teachers, as parents, that we are going to really have a very dynamic community of go-getters, of kids who are doing creative and interesting work that are going to solve a lot of problems and help us to build ultimately a better world. So I think your work is right on and just exactly what we need right now.
Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. I've got my takeaways, and sweet friends, I know you have yours, so let's discuss them. Come up on Facebook. Let's go to the Dr. Robyn Silverman page. You can also go to the How to Talk to Kids About Anything page on Facebook that's just forming now, and we're talking about all of the great podcasts. You can go to drrobynsilverman.com or twitter.com/drrobyn. And I'm on Instagram now, so you can go there too, and I'll be putting all kinds of memes up there related to this podcast. And if you love this podcast like I did, I hope you'll go up to iTunes and rate and review it so other people can learn about these outstanding solutions that Dr. Marilyn Price Mitchell has put up here for you. I'd really appreciate it. It means so much to me. That's all the time we have for today. My fellow parents, leaders, and educators, thank you so much for tuning in to How to Talk to Kids About Anything. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, I hope you'll visit drrobynsilverman.com. So many great podcasts up there. Show notes will be up there. Go and visit, and you will have a ball. I look forward to weathering the storms and enjoying the sunny side of life together. And please remember, even on days when you fall short, my goodness, we all do. You've got this. You're here. You're getting the information you need. I know it's not easy, but never forget there's always tomorrow. Parenting is the ultimate do-over. I'm right there with you. And as there are moments when we doubt our know-how, our choices, and our sweet, sweet sanity, please know you are 10 times the parent you think you are. Until next time, this is Dr. Robyn Silverman with How to Talk to Kids About Anything. Please tune in again and keep connecting through conversation. See you next week.
You've been listening to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, please visit drrobynsilverman.com.